Hi all, greetings from the Netherlands. I hope you all had a nice day out yesterday and enjoy a fruitful symposium together. From a distance, I would like to tell you a little bit about a network analysis that I'm performing for the Northwest European Buick swan population that migrates from the Russian Arctic in summer to countries like United Kingdom, the Netherlands and Germany in winter. It's work in progress, so the results I will show here are all preliminary. And since you're all swan experts, I won't bore you with an extensive introduction, but dive straight into the topic. An ecological network analysis is used increasingly in bird migration ecology. Here you see examples by Fokkema et al. On the left, who aim to identify the usage of the Wadden Sea by brent geese, and on the right, the migratory route of white storks that is structured based on a network analysis by Kulch et al. In this study, we apply an ecological network analysis on the winter area of the Buick swan based on the extensive data that we have on this population. There are several questions leading to this investigation. First of all, we want to investigate whether the sites that are used by Buick swans in winter do actually serve as a network, which means do swans regularly move from site to site and by that utilize the whole winter area. We expect that they do, which is why the second question investigates whether the important areas in this network change over time. In network terminology, important areas are called nodes. The third question involves the European network of protected areas, which is called the Natura 2000 network. We want to assess whether the important sites of the swans are actually covered by this network of protected sites. To assess this, we first used group observations done by citizen scientists in the Netherlands and Germany. We mapped them and selected them based on the following criteria. First, there should be more than 9 individuals per group observation, and second, only 1 observation per location per day was included. Subsequently, we clustered these observations into important areas for the swans based on the following criteria. We used a clustering threshold in between the examples I showed earlier in the presentation. This is because the wintering area of the swans spatially is in between the spatial extent of the examples that I showed, which were the Wadden Sea for the brent geese and the migratory route from Europe to Africa of the white storks. Each cluster had to have more than 14 days of observations and a minimum of 169 individuals. This number corresponds to the Ramsar 1% criterion for wetland protection. Also, the site had to have observations in at least 4 years within our study period. Altogether, this resulted in 40 network nodes, clusters of observations, which we from now on will call nodes. We added nodes for the United Kingdom, Denmark, and Poland, which total added up to 43 network nodes. On this map, you can see the observations that are included in the clusters in black and the resulting clusters in yellow. Some of these clusters were located very close together. We know that Buick swans fly between 0 and 15 kilometers from their nightly roost sites to their foraging sites. We did not want to confuse roost and forage sites with actual nodes of the network, which is why we removed the boundaries between clusters that were less than 20 kilometers apart. By doing this, we reduced the number of network nodes from 40 to 27. And before I forget to mention, we created the clusters based on a minimum convex polygon surrounding the observations included in that cluster, as you can see visualized in this map as well. So to summarize, this is the collection of sites of importance to the swans based on the group observations in the Netherlands and Germany. It's 27 sites in total, and we added the United Kingdom, Denmark, and Poland to be able to create the network. In addition, we added a node called out of the wintering area to be able to connect the winter network to sightings done outside the spatial range of this study. To connect the network nodes, we needed to identify the connections. In network analysis terminology, these connections are called edges. We identified the edges based on the recitings of neck and leg rings by volunteer observers between 1990 and 2019. For each reciting, we identified the node to place it into the network. We collated all edges per 5-year period in the next visualizations. So in this slide, you can see the visualization of the networks for each of these 5-year periods. The network nodes are visualized by yellow dots and the edges as gray arcs. The numbers below each of the panels represent the sample size in terms of unique edges and total number of movements between the network nodes included for that period. You can see that these numbers are relatively high, which is caused by the high reciting probability of Buick swans, neckbands and leg rings in winter in Europe. This visualization of the network doesn't show you much, but perhaps some characteristics of the network will. I've chosen 3 different metrics to calculate that summarize the usage of the network by the swans. First, there's the density of the network. This represents the number of realized edges in the network versus the number of possible edges. The density of the Buick swan network shows a significant increasing trend over time, which means the wintering sites of the Buick swans in northwestern Europe have increasingly served as a network over time. Second, assortativity represents the extent to which nodes with similar properties are connected to each other. As a property, I chose the dominant habitat type of the network node. In this presentation, I won't tell you much about habitat, but here I included agriculture, grass, and water as different types. Positive assortativity values mean that nodes with similar habitat types are connected. Negative assortativity means that more often nodes with different habitat types are connected. The trend towards negative assortativity is significant for the swans in our study period. Third, I looked at components. The components of the maximum strongly connected network. Our network in total has 31 nodes, so the network is rather strongly connected in all periods. This also means that no subnetworks are present in the winter area of the Buick swan. For these statistics, please note that while some of these trends are significant, the absolute change in the y-axis is very small. Also, it seems that there was a change for all 3 metrics between the first 15 and the last 15 years of the study. So periods 1 to 3 and then periods 4 to 6. We should look further into this. So this slide might be a bit redundant, but in order to identify the links between the nodes of the network, we needed to identify the edges. We did this based on the recitings of individuals within the node and the consecutive reciting of that same individual in another node within the same winter season. If we could connect 2 nodes in this way, this connection was called an edge. For each 5-year period, we calculated the frequency that each edge was used. In this next slide, you can see the 5 most frequently used edges light up in blue on top of the network. It's very clear that often the most frequently recorded edge is the one where the swans are either arriving or leaving the wintering area. These are the edges connecting with node number 31 in the top right corner. If you leave out this specific node, you can see which edges in the network are actually the most frequently used in the winter area. I must specify here that the line width of the blue line is representing the frequency of movements along those edges. You can see that the most important edges change in the different 5-year periods between 1990 and 2019. Purely visually, they seem to move eastward slightly over time. Apart from the edges, one can also calculate the importance of the different nodes in a network. In this case, I chose to calculate the weighted genus centrality of each node. This metric calculates how often a node is on the shortest path between other nodes in the network and takes into account the incoming and outgoing connections of the SWAN data as weights. Here I have visualized the most important nodes based on this measure, as well as the most frequently used edges for each period. You can see that they do not necessarily connect. Now we arrive at the applied question of this research project. Does the Natura 2000 network of protected sites protect the Buick swan population sufficiently? For non-EU citizens, the Natura 2000 network is the EU nature conservation scheme. Throughout Europe, sites are enlisted in the Natura 2000 legislation based on the presence of particularly important flora, fauna, or habitats. This way, the EU aims to protect biodiversity on its grounds. EU member states are obliged to protect the enlisted Natura 2000 sites and the target species of these sites from deterioration. The Buick swan is a target species of Natura 2000 and also for many of the enlisted sites. Given the negative population trend of the Buick swan in northwestern Europe, the question whether Natura 2000 areas sufficiently protect this species is very relevant. In this map, you can see the previously shown network nodes of the Buick swans in the Netherlands and Germany. In green, you can see the boundaries of the enlisted Natura 2000 protected sites that overlap with these network nodes. Shown in red is the actual overlap between Buick swan network nodes and Natura 2000 areas. If we then add the actual sightings of ringed Buick swans in these areas in black, you can see that the actual overlap of Natura 2000 areas is rather limited. It seems that although the Buick swan is a target species in many Natura 2000 sites, the core sites of the Buick swan winter network are not protected by the EU nature conservation legislation. A small note here is that there are protected areas installed at a national level as well that I do not show here. They have a different form of protection and are differently legally represented. To conclude, I come back to the main questions of this research project. The Buick swan winter area does seem to function as a network of well-connected sites within the Netherlands and Germany, also connecting the United Kingdom, Denmark, and Poland. There seems to be no subnetworks. The importance of various sites in the network changes over time and seems to shift to the east, which would be in accordance to previous research on short stopping in this population. Further research will need to confirm this on the winter network level. And last but not least, if we overlay the Buick swan network of sites with the Natura 2000 protected area network, we see that the sites used by the swans are insufficiently covered by the formerly protected sites. These results call for a rigorous reassessment of the assignment of protected areas for target species of the Natura 2000 legislation. I think by now my time is almost up. Unfortunately, I cannot be virtually present at this time to attend the symposium. But should you have any questions or suggestions related to the work just presented in this presentation, please reach out to me via the email address on the slide. Thank you for your attention and enjoy your presence at the 7th International Swan Symposium. Bye.